Hello.
Thank you for taking time. I don't think anybody is going to believe me if I tell him that AI is going to get exported out of India. But if I go and tell Indian companies can export FinTech, people are inviting us in. 18% of all code in Pine Labs is now being written by AI. We have 1,000 technologists, engineers, and product managers. We don't believe we will hire even one more person beyond the 1,000 numbers.
If you've disrupted the banking business, what will disrupt you?
The same thing what Uday talked about, right? Which is laziness. We don't want to do lending because we believe that there's enough and more money to be made by being a tech company.
Were fintechs to be allowed to become banks, will banks, legacy banks, be endangered species?
Consumers have given the answer that I'd rather operate with a fintech than operate with a bank. Going forward, if this gets opened up, there is a real chance that banks will then become warehouses of money while the transaction layer would be with someone else.
Did we swing too much into cowboy territory in the fintech side?
The great new founders who are coming in with completely disruptive ideas, they're almost starting up with says that if I can create enough and more disruption, maybe compliance will follow. More and more fintech founders have gray hair now because they suddenly are required to understand compliance.
A banker's son from Bandra, an engineer who spent 15 years in the corporate payments world before giving it all up to build his first startup, Citrus Pay, later acquired by PayU. He went on to lead PayU through India's UPI boom and in 2020 took charge of Pine Labs, steering it into its next phase of global expansion and AI-led digital payments. Hello and welcome to Young Turks Reloaded. I'm Shireen Bhan, and joining me on the show today is somebody. From its start in 1998, Pine Labs has grown into a global fintech platform, powering digital payments, issuing solutions and affordable products for over 1 million merchants across India, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Australia, the US and Africa. In FY25, it processed 11.4 trillion in GTV and over 5.6 billion transactions, making it one of the most significant players in India's digital payments landscape. Fresh off its public listing, Pine Labs is firing on all cylinders, reporting 650 crore rupees in Q2 FY26 revenue, 62% year-on-year EBITDA growth, positive PAT, and a record $48 billion in GTV, and rising global revenues, which now contribute 17% to its top line. From India's surging digital payments ecosystem to the rise of AI-driven financial infrastructure and Pine Labs' global ambitions post-listing, we unpack it all with Amrish Rau right here on Young Turks Reloaded. Amrish, it's great to have you back on Young Turks, though you actually never made it to Young Turks. Citrus Pay made it, but you were not there when we did the interview.
Thank you very much for doing this. I have to say this, that the first time when you came to Citrus Pay and you came to the office, I wasn't around. I didn't make it look as things. It's okay. We didn't. I wasn't there when we turned up on Young Turks. Well, made it now. So thank you very much for coming here.
No, and congratulations in person on the listing. And I can see, all the signs over here, hashtag Pine Labs listed. It's interesting for two reasons. One, in this cohort of companies that have listed, you're a non-founder who's taken a company to listing.
Yes.
Is there some regret that you didn't do Citrus listing and you've done Pine Labs listing?
Absolute regret about the fact that I sold Citrus too early. But hey, look, you get second chances. Like I've said this before, when we sold Citrus, within a year, I felt like, there's an opportunity to create something humongous. And, credit to all our investors, Shailendra from Peak 15, Sequoia, India. I got an opportunity to lead Pine Labs. I've treated it as my own company. I'm not the promoter, I'm not the founder, but I do believe I'm the owner of Pine Labs. Led the business with that same passion. And, this is just one step in a larger journey.
Talking about one step in the larger journey, and I know you've always said that you've treated the listing as a corporate event.
Yeah.
But it does have its own implications in terms of how the company is perceived, and more importantly, how the company now has to deliver quarter on quarter. How are you preparing yourself for life post-listing? You've just delivered your first results post-listing. You've had a good quarter, so some pressure off your back, but the mental makeup of having to deal with this, how have you been having that internal dialogue?
Interestingly, in my career, I spent the first half working for global American companies. And honestly, we have lived quarter by quarter in that period. Actually, if anything, the startup world was a little bit of a shock for me, which was like, wait, what? Nobody's looking at numbers? Well,
no one's talking about making money.
No one's talking about making money. So, in general, I have always worked with that mindset which says that, get your business right in the short term and long term. Remember, as a CEO, the easiest thing to run a company is to run it for the short term. The easiest thing to run a company is to run it for the long term. The tough part is combining both together, which is get your quarters right, but at the same time invest into what's going to happen 2 years later or 3 years later. So I've always had that mindset in me, which is like, look ahead, but also solve for the quarter. So I'm not too worried about, how the change is going to be.
But speaking about the journey ahead, let's talk about the journey behind. And it's really interesting. You grew up in a family of bankers. Both your parents, your father and your mother, were bankers with public sector banks. Yeah. You had no idea that you wanted to get into banking, or digital banking was not even a thing at that point in time. What were you hoping for? Telecom, right?
I'll tell you a real story, right? So I met this guy, and my dad was with me, and they talked about a word called sunrise industry. I said, what does sunrise industry mean? And he said, telecom is a sunrise industry where the future will always be bright, and will be bright for many, many years. And then I did not get a job in the telecom space.
So the sun set before the sun had even risen for you.
Exactly. But as coincidence would have it, I hit into the payment space. In those days, it was ATMs was considered to be a big revolution in payments. My first job was with Siemens. We were into ATMs. And from 1996 to today, I've done nothing else but just payments and FinTech. How I got in was a sheer stroke of luck. Having said that, I've actually seen that entire journey where, I've debated with bankers where bankers were saying, who needs technology? I can only put in more people at the payment counter and transactions would happen. To today, where that's not up for debate. So, it's been a fantastic journey from 1996 to today, where we've seen money truly turn digital right in front of your eyes. And you would want to think you've played a small part in this entire journey.
Well, I think you've played quite a significant part in that entire journey. But, I saw you tweet about the fact that people today are having their midlife crises much earlier in their 20s. But you actually had your midlife crisis in your 20s, which forced you to, or made you do Citrus Pay.
It was hardcore midlife crisis. The only good news out of that midlife crisis was I sort of realized that I'm going through this midlife crisis. And that midlife crisis was everything is going good. I had a job which was running the Asia business for one of the greatest payments companies in the world. Everything was looking up. But you just feel, is that all which is in store for me? Is there something more for me? So you almost feel that you want to, change the status quo. As luck would have it, my wife was working at that time. I talked to her and I said, you know what? I'm going to try this. Allow me to do it for 3 years. If I fail, I'll go get a job and, we'll be back to the usual life. And, things worked out very well. But yes, totally, I believe I went through a midlife crisis, mid-career crisis.
Are you having that internal dialogue now as well? Is this it for me? What next?
No, I think now it's a lot more clearer. So where I am today, and again, what I told you, we've literally seen paper money change to digital. And now for the first time, I'm feeling that the opportunity is not just India. I don't think anybody is going to believe me if I tell him that AI is going to get exported out of India. But if I go and tell customers and clients in global markets and say, Indian companies can export FinTech to Southeast Asia, Middle East, people are believing us, people are inviting us in. I truly believe this is an opportunity for FinTech entrepreneurs to create the same impact like what an Infosys or a TCS did about 30 years back. And I'm all into that idea.
That's a very interesting point that you make, because today what we're seeing happen, at least as far as the Indian stock markets are concerned, where, FIIs have been elusive largely or selling. And one of the factors being talked about is India doesn't have an AI company. Could FinTech be the answer to India's AI problem? I mean, could that be the flavor, so to speak? You certainly seem to think so.
I'm completely convinced with that idea, which says that we have an opportunity to do something huge in FinTech. Let me give you one example, right? There are these global companies like a Stripe and an Adyen coming out of the US and trying to spread globally. What stops the Pine Labs from taking its technology, both for offline payments, for cards, what we are doing in terms of digital payments infrastructure, and then take it to a Philippines or a Singapore, and we now have clients in UAE? I think it's our opportunity to go compete with even the greatest American companies when it comes to digital payments. That's the ambition that I'm trying to tell everybody within my organization and also the investor community that we've had for so many years.
So what's the response? What's the feedback? Today, 17% of your top line coming in from global operations. Where do you believe that number could be a few years down the line? What's the ambition or the aspiration that you're working towards?
So at this point of time, what we are telling ourselves is that at least 30% of our revenues should come out of global markets. We think that the only thing which is going to stop us is not going to be about the product or product market fit or the platforms. I think we have all of those answers. Now what we have to do is we've got to be relevant at a selling cycle level to be able to go sell in the African markets or the Middle Eastern markets. We have 5 people right now based out of California selling to American clients today with that same idea, which is we build great technologies here. Why can't we sell it in the US? By the way, just one very interesting fact. The biggest retailer in Australia is Woolworths. And Woolworths has their own prepaid card and gift card, 100% running on the Pine Labs platform, and has been running for the last 4 or 5 years. So none of these ideas are new ideas. We've established product market fit. We've got clients. Now can we grow faster? So we do believe that 30% of our revenue should come out of global markets.
But, what will it take for you to be able to scale and be able to achieve that 30% number? Because as you said, it's not a one-trick pony that you're dealing with. You've got examples in different markets, in different geographies. What will it take for you to scale this globally?
As I said, I think products are there. It's our abilities to communicate the story, have a sales motion which will operate in completely different geographies, different cultures, become relevant in those markets. You got to really go all into those areas. Now, I have about 350 people working purely in international markets. In the US, for example, the team, there are basically local Americans, who are part of our team there. That's the approach that we've taken. I'll give you another very interesting fact. As we moved towards an India IPO, we have a lot of team which is based out of here in India. But actively what we are saying is if we are building out in markets like Singapore, more than 60% of the staff is local Singaporeans that we have out there. So you got to really embed yourself in the culture, understand the baseball talk if you really want to win in the US. I think that's the one which we've got to solve for.
So act local, but think global. Glocal.
Global, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
that's what you're working towards at this point in time. But you said that you don't have to hard sell the India FinTech story, because that is a story that the world has recognized, and due credit to NPCI, UPI, to the government, and so on and so forth. Has that made the global ambition, the global aspiration easier for you? Is it easier to knock on doors today to say we're Indian FinTech and we have a solution for you?
See, when you go to any new client, may that be in India or globally, the few things that they are looking for is, have you done this before? Can you operate at our scale, and can you meet our price points? Scale, we did about $50 billion of payment volumes in the last quarter. We are doing transactions across online, offline, bill payments. So we've done this product before. We've done this extremely well. And then when it comes to pricing, I have to tell you, India teaches you many lessons. So we do believe that pricing, we should be able to be competitive when we go abroad.
And that brings me to the big question.
Yeah.
India has no shortage of fintech companies, though you'd like to believe that you're the tech fin company
Correct.
that's operating in India. But what about making money? I know that you have stated very clearly that you were adjusted EBITDA positive well before your IPO, that you were PAT positive as you went into the IPO. But it is hard making money in this business, is it not?
Absolutely. So in India, and again, in payments, it's a very similar mindset, right? You don't make money, hand over fist on every transaction. You end up making very tiny sliver on every transaction, but then the number of transactions are huge. So that's one part which you got to remember. Second is, you always got to think, where did the transaction start? Where did the transaction end? And what happened before the transaction start? And what's going to happen after the transaction? And start building out tech for those services. Let me give you one example. BBPS or bill payments. As the transaction is happening over the pipe, there is no money to be made.
Yeah.
But where the bill is getting generated and where the bill is landing, if you provide value out there, I think there is an opportunity to make some more money. So for instance, it could be simply in terms of reporting, analytics, data analytics, settlement, risk protection. All of those areas, you will be able to make a little bit more money. I'll give you an example on the account aggregator side.
Yeah.
We don't talk about the fact that we are one of the persons powering account aggregator transactions. We rather talk about the fact that we are doing a lot of data analytics once the data lands with the receiving party. So if you can do credit underwriting, if you can do holistic information about the consumer, you'll get paid differently. If you're just being the pipe, I think there is very little to be made in India.
And that's interesting because I know that, you've been sort of trying to change the perception of Pine Labs. You're not just a POS company, you're much more than that. But, have people started to recognize that? I mean, has the general public, has the investor base started to recognize that?
The answer is no. The answer is no. And the reality is what happens is everybody gets to see Pine Labs at least once a day when they are making a transaction somewhere. So invariably what people think is that the POS machine, that's the company what Pine Labs is. My mom believes that's all which I do. She thinks I've got POS machines in the bag. That's not who we are. We actually said that now 29% of our revenues comes out of POS-related subscription fees or rental fees that we earn. 71% of our revenues is coming out of just transaction processing or value-added services on top of that. And that's the one that is growing at almost 30% plus for many years. In fact, the POS business, we believe, will grow at about 15% over the next few years. But it's what happens on top of the POS machine that is much more interesting. Let me give you one example. Bandra now has a new dosa location called Bene Dosa. At the Bene Dosa, there is a screen which you use for making a checkout. So you can place the order and you can pay using a Pine Labs POS. I'm actually interested who created that screen. Because owning the checkout can be a lot more richer revenues than owning the POS. That's how I'm thinking about the business and where the business will go.
Speaking of where this business is going to go, and I want to put this in the context of a conversation that I recently had with Uday Kotak, where he believes that banks no longer enjoy the kind of moat that they had, which was largely on account of regulation. And of course, the question is, will fintechs eat banks' lunch and dinner and breakfast and so on and so forth? And banks themselves are being disrupted because of all kinds of other aspects. Now, what will disrupt fintechs? If you've disrupted the banking business, what will disrupt you?
The same thing what Uday Kotak talked about, right, which is laziness. I think what is a worry for me is that if more and more fintech founders just think about lending as the way to make money in fintech, I think we are almost stopping ourselves early. One of the things that we've taken as a position is that we don't want to do lending because we believe that there's enough and more money to be made by being a tech company. If you are constantly investing into tech, I think the fintech opportunity is a huge opportunity. Let me give you one example. today, I believe that 3x the number of transactions that banks and financial institutions are doing are being done by fintechs in India. And that's because they're making the user interface a lot more easier. They're going after complex problems. And we've not even started in terms of what the consumer asking and what the merchant is asking. The more we focus on tech, I think we will have a bigger opportunity. If we become lazy and start to look after just lending related opportunity, I do believe that there'll be 5 other lenders out there. I totally believe that some of the NBFCs in India will do a way better job in lending.
But, and again, we're talking about disruption. We're also talking about what's happening in the rest of the world. Who would have thought, and this is an example that Mr. Kotak spoke about as well, that in Brazil, the most valued company is a neobank
Absolutely.
with no branches. So what is the kind of future that you imagine for money in India?
Let me give you something which has been playing on my mind for some time, right? So for the longest time, banks in India have looked at attracting consumers by giving them a savings bank account and allowing them to store money. And then they go ahead and layer on transaction services, payment services. But really what the consumer is now saying is, I will hold the money with that financial institution which gives me the best user interface and allows me to do transactions at a much faster pace. So what's happening is the consumer behavior is entirely being flipped around. I do believe fintechs have a greater relationship with the consumer than even banks. However, there are some regulators which have taken their time to open up the markets. Across Southeast Asia, all the regulators have gone ahead and opened up the channel when it comes to digital banking, and they have opened up licenses on the digital banking side. And what that has done is brought in new competition out there. The incumbent banks have got to fight to keep their position. I do believe more and more countries will open up digital banking licenses. And when that happens, it's going to be an even playing field between fintechs offering banking services and banks offering fintech services.
I'm sure that this conversation has happened with the regulator.
It's all in my head. It's all in my head.
No, but do you believe that India should move down that path? And if the regulator were to greenlight this, as and when they do decide to greenlight it, would you want to apply for a bank license?
So let me address the first part out of it. I think that the regulator in India has played a very important part in the growth of digital payment. Let me give you, again, some examples of it. When OTP came in, and we all make fun of OTP today, but I believe because of the OTP, the common consumer in India feels completely comfortable to do digital.
And I think trust is crucial.
Trust is crucial. And actually, once trust came in, then you saw digital payment transactions just completely zoom. As I said, before OTPs came in, we had real stories where people were keeping debit cards in their home locker because they felt that money is going to go away. Once OTP came in, everybody is using digital payments. So I think the regulators played a very important role. So when I have these ideas, I feel very uncomfortable in being able to tell somebody as smart as the Reserve Bank of India or the Ministry of Finance that what they should be doing, because they have to cater to a really large set of individuals, different sectors to go after. So I'm not 100% sure when does a regulator think that the time has arrived.
But as you've said, and I agree with what you're saying, that at least as far as the younger demographic is concerned, the younger cohort is concerned, they're much more comfortable with a GPay or a Paytm or a Pine Labs or whatever, or a Razorpay, whatever the case may be, because that is what they're using for their daily transactions, perhaps more so than their traditional bank. So were fintechs to become banks, were fintechs to be allowed to become banks, will banks, legacy banks, be endangered species?
There will be serious competition. In fact, right now when I'm getting to see that 3x the transactions are happening on fintech apps, I genuinely believe that we've already passed that argument. Consumers have given the answer that I'd rather operate with a fintech than operate with a bank or a financial institution. The part here is banks and financial institutions do compliance very well. They follow the regulatory practices extremely well. And that's why they are in this position where they are. Going forward, if this gets opened up, there is a real chance that banks will then become warehouses of money while the transaction layer would be with someone else entirely. So yes, I do believe that consumers have actually let it know that they would rather prefer a company which is giving them the best UX. Now, mind you, you have great companies like the Kotaks and HDFCs, ICICIs, SBIs, who are making humongous effort right now to come up with the best consumer app. I want to say this. My bank recently upgraded to their new app. And that app is just beautiful, and I actually like to work with my bank's app. My argument is you got to understand what the consumer wants and build your products and services so that the consumer stays with you.
And I want to talk about this relationship that has been built between fintechs and banks, because at the start of the fintech boom, it was like banks' obituaries were being written. Then we saw this period go through that, fintechs' obituaries were being written because of the regulatory changes that came in and so on and so forth. Where are we today in this relationship between banks and fintechs?
It's an interesting point. I guess both the group has been humbled a bit. I think fintechs have been told, saying, guys, you also have to take care of compliance.
Yeah.
There is an RBI which has regulations for you also. So I think there is been a little bit of a humbling on the fintech side.
Did we swing too much into cowboy territory in the fintech side?
I do think so. And I'll give you a story behind that one. When I say I come from the corporate world, regulations, compliance, corporate governance, ethics, those are the kind of things that we've been taught for 10, 12, 15 years. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. Sometimes what happens is the great new founders who are coming in with completely disruptive ideas, they're almost starting up with says that if I can create enough and more disruption, maybe compliance will follow. Now, that's when you tend to go a little bit overboard in terms of, being aggressive with what you want to do. But that's the push-pull, I have to say, which operates in most markets. You go into, let's say, a Middle Eastern markets or a Southeast Asian markets, that push-pull is happening today between fintechs, banks and financial institutions, and regulators.
So do you believe that some of the overreach that happened on the fintech side, some corrections have been made on account of course, regulatory intervention as well, but has there been a greater understanding now of what works, what doesn't work? And also on the regulator's side, perhaps more of an appreciation of the fact that, they need to make changes to allow for innovation as well?
Absolutely, and both ways. So one of the uncomfortable facts is that more and more fintech founders have gray hair now because they suddenly are required to understand compliance. But I can tell you one thing.
Baal safed ho gaye compliance karte.
Absolutely. So that is totally happening today. The other thing...
You don't have any gray hair, by the way.
I don't.
So
just genes.
Always been good on compliance, is it?
Yeah, look, I keep talking about the fact that we have never been hauled up by the Reserve Bank of India. And that's because we actually do worry about regulation a lot. And we've never been hauled up by the RBI. So I'm super supportive of what RBI does. Now, coming to the other side of it is, also what we are getting to see, may that be with RBI or, somebody like an NPCI, or for that matter, even the Ministry of Finance, there's an open door policy. Look, I'm one of those founders where I really don't like to, schmooze around or lobby around with the regulator or with
Is a lot of that happening in the fintech ecosystem?
I don't
a lot of
do it.
schmoozing happening.
I don't do it. Having said that, when there is a genuine request, we do get support from everybody in the ecosystem. And that's a phenomenal change that we have seen in the last 10, 15 years. And that's important because if you know that the regulator is going to sit down with you and understand what you're going through, we'll find a way out of it. And that's been happening for now some time.
So what has been the hardest part of growing this ecosystem? What has been the hardest part, especially in the last few years, of taking Pine Labs from where it was to where it is today? What would you, and what have been the lessons learned on account of that?
Yeah, look, what I would say as the hardest part is fintech in general is going through tremendous change. And that change forces us to literally kill products and build new products on a yearly basis. So there is no real product which sits on the shelf for more than 18 months or 24 months time. Again, stable coins around the world, not in India, but stable coins are clearly having a significant impact on the payments industry globally.
Cryptos?
And cryptos also, it does three things, right? One, it makes transactions faster. It is way more transparent, a transaction model out there. And then the last piece out there is it just makes transactions a lot more cheaper to happen in global markets. I'm not talking about India. Now, if I'm in FinTech, which really wants to go after this global opportunity, I just can't think only about cards and real-time payment transactions
or
like UPI
Indian regulation
or
and
Indian
what that
regulations.
allows.
You got to keep your eyes and ears open in terms of what's happening on stable coins. Got to take it seriously and build services around that area. One of the projects which we are working on internally right now is, can we come up with a prepaid card backed by stable coins for, let's say, the Middle Eastern market? Because I do think there's going to be an opportunity associated with that. I think that's been one of the toughest parts. Also, what do you not invest in? Let me give you my example from my Citrus days. In Citrus, we never invested into a wallet. We never built a wallet because we believed wallet does not have a long-term story. I have to say we got proved right over the 4 or 5 years period. But somebody might argue that Citrus never got the branding because Citrus never went into the wallet space.
Yeah.
But in 5 years' time, wallets were done. It was out of the way. So it's also important what you don't invest in because everything looks like a shiny new object in the FinTech space.
So considering that lots of shiny new things are visible in the FinTech space today, what are the choices that you're choosing not to make?
So again, I don't need to repeat the story on lending. That's an area which I don't want to go after. I do believe that there is something which is making the consumer go through tremendous change. I do believe that those are areas that you can come to it later. Palm-based payments. There was a lot of talk out of the Asian markets and the China market where people were talking about palm-based payments. Now, we've got the technology to build palm-based payments today. Is that something which I want to double down after over the next 12 months' time? Maybe not. Do I want to go after that screen that I talked to you about, which is a little bit more dumber as compared to a palm-based payments? Maybe that's what I would want to go after today. So there are some technologies which I feel will take some time to come up, and then you can just leave them alone for the next few years.
Okay, AI. You can't leave AI alone for the next few years because everyone is asking every CEO today, what is your AI strategy? What is your AI strategy as a large FinTech player with global ambitions?
3 areas. One, obviously, AI is going to solve for efficiency in the back office. May that be in terms of risk management, underwriting, or for that matter, customer services. AI is playing a very important role.
How much of that is already in play?
As far as customer services is concerned, almost 40% or 50% of our calls and our customer interactions are now completely moved to AI. So that's the first part. Second part is purely in terms of coding and engineering work which is happening. I actually disclosed it just in the last recent call is almost 18% of all code in Pine Labs is now being written by AI. And we want
GenAI.
With GenAI, and we want to now accelerate it over the next few quarters.
So do you not hire engineers? Are you hiring fewer engineers? What do the engineers do?
We have 1,000 technologists, engineers, and product managers across the various group companies that we have today. And we actually called it out and said, we don't believe we will hire even one more person beyond the 1,000 numbers that we have today. What we are not calling out yet is, will we be reducing the staff strength? And the only reason...
So you will not hire one additional engineer?
Absolutely. Not even a single more headcount will go on the engineering side. What I'm not saying is I will reduce my engineering numbers purely because our ambitions are moving faster. We are going global. And that's the reason why I'm still going to require engineering work to be done in global markets. Absolutely.
But I mean... if 18% becomes, and what are you working towards? What is the target? I mean, is there a target?
No, there is no target. It's a constant evolution which is out there. Just yesterday, one of our CTOs in our business said that one of our legacy platforms got completely rewritten, where 40% of that code writing was done using AI. So, that business unit showed almost 40% of code being written using AI. So there is no target out there. I think the move is anywhere where you can do the vibe coding and actually get benefit out of it, get it.
Are you vibe coding?
We are into that. And as I told you, we've got different departments in our company entirely operating on that area.
So, and this is perhaps an interesting thing to ask a leader in an environment like this, where you're openly sort of saying that, look, 18%, 20%, 30%, whatever is being done by GenAI in terms of coding today. What is the message that you send out to engineers, telling them that they continue to be relevant and important to the organization?
It's not just engineers. It is also business managers, salespeople, me. The reality is, if we are not keeping ourselves updated with the latest technology, the latest set of information, I think all of us are going to get called out. It's just where the market is moving. We really need to stay on top of our game. And if you're on top of the game, I think the opportunity, at least in the fintech space, is so big. I don't think so anybody needs to forget the fact that we are still in a sunrise industry. We've got so much to build. There is no need to be worried about anything. However, if somebody continues to believe that testing has to be done the old school way of 20 years back, that person is going to get called out. Or for that matter, even sales. I'll give you one example on the sales front. Today, we have almost 1,000 people in the field today talking to clients. And my simple question to the sales leader is, do you get to hear what those salespeople are doing in the field? And if the answer is no, they are missing a trick when it comes to AI, because today the AI can capture what salespeople are doing. And that's something, even on the sales side, we've got to really bring in that technology.
The sun clearly has risen as far as the fintech space is concerned. But, everyone talks about the size of the opportunity. And in India, unfortunately, when people talk about the addressable market and actually the monetizable market, the difference has been very significant.
Yes.
You talk about different sectors from quick commerce to e-commerce, and we've seen that play itself out. What does that mean as far as the fintech industry is concerned? Is there less of a dissonance between the addressable market and the monetizable market?
That's an interesting topic. Look, I've been working for many years. For the first time in some of our adjacencies or other startup world, we are getting to see this talk about saturation or plateauing out, which has happened out there. In the fintech space where we are in, and the monetizable fintech space out there in the market today, I really don't see any stopping. Again, online payment transactions are continuing to grow at about 30% in the market. You'll be surprised the number of digital devices at the checkout counters per checkout counter has actually increased in the last 5 years. It has not reduced in the last 5 years. If you look at the RBI data is showing that prepaid instruments are growing at about 23-24% even now. And that growth, according to me, is continuing. The important part is, can you find new workflows? Today, when we look at a checkout where Pine Labs is present, we don't look at it as there's a POS machine out there. We actually say that there is a 7-inch screen which also accepts payment terminals. And on that 7-inch screen, what can you deliver? Can you do loyalty? Can you do rewards? Can you do installment payments? Can you do affordability-based transactions? All of those services are then being powered by Pine Lab. Today, 80 to 85% of all installment payment transactions are happening on the Pine Labs terminal. So that's one piece. But we believe that the high-end mobile phones in India, 70% of that is happening on either installment payments, or there is an early trade-in, or somebody is wanting a short buyback on that device. So people are looking for affordability solutions. We are saying, use our platform at the checkout counter to provide affordability solutions.
So what could that number be in terms of the headroom for growth and the big opportunity that you speak of?
I don't have an end date there, but what I can tell you on that one is we believe that our growth, which has been generally between 25% plus, can continue for the next 5 years in terms of business. But when you go into micro segments, we think bill payments will grow, online payments will grow, even offline digital payments are continuing to grow at about 21-22% over the last many years. I think that growth will continue for many, many years. I keep talking about this analogy. Think of it as if you're in the cricket stadium. Jasprit Bumrah is on the start of his run-up. The crescendo is building up. That's where we are in the fintech world. We are not on the 45th over of a one-day international. We're literally at the start of the journey. We will all be surprised how much of digitization is still yet to happen.
Well, Jasprit Bumrah is the man that you chose. Is there a particular reason for that?
Well, he makes everything exciting. And I play a lot of cricket.
I know you play a lot of cricket, and that brings me to the point we're all talking about disruption and change. But you don't actually like change in your life very much, right? I mean, you've stuck with the same set of friends through your pretty much most of your adult life. You've stuck with Singapore, even though this makes sense perhaps for you to be here in India running Pine Labs. But you don't really like change very much, do you, personally?
Yeah, maybe that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is like, look, at the end of the day, what makes you feel super comfortable? One of the places where I feel the most comfortable is watching a game. Both my children played squash. My son played for India squash. The best moments of my life is when I'm sitting outside, watching them hit the ball on the ball comes back to them. Is just a fantastic thing to do. Why change it? Everything is looking good. So I'm quite happy with...
What's harder, being a parent or being a CEO?
That's an interesting one. I think being a parent is easy. I don't think so. Being a parent is difficult at all. So, but I tend to bring sports even into my management style. So
how so?
So we've got our culture code which says every day is game day. So the way we look at it is that don't treat anything too serious in your life. Think of it as a game day. There'll be a match on one of the days. Other days you're just dribbling the ball and practicing on the football field. But at the end of the day, be happy with what you're doing. Don't take pressure. So we are not the kind of company which will fret over something which is out of our control. And that's something which I've tried to do in my corporate world, in Citrus, even here in Pine Labs. Have a very game kind of atmosphere within the company.
So speaking of not fretting, is there anything that you do fret about?
As I said, it's a product world which I do fret about, and the change in the product world.
What is it that keeps you up at night?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I sleep really well. Again, this is a very important point, right? If you're doing the right thing, and if you don't have too many things to worry about, you can sleep extremely well. I don't fret over anything. As I said, next day morning, what I'm not trying to say is that by any chance we are a relaxed organization. We are a very intense organization. I have intensity in what I'm doing, may that be from 7 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock in the night when I'm on the job. But at the end of the day, there is no baggage which you take home. When you go home, you're like on your own, and it's all very relaxed.
So, if I were to ask you to distill for me the biggest learnings that you've had over the course of your corporate career, of being a founder, of exiting a company that you founded, of starting up again, taking a company public, what have been the most significant lessons that you've learned that you believe someone will find value in?
Many, and some of them might not be will be at odds with each other. So on one side, I'm saying that go all in to deliver what you need to deliver, But at the end of the day, don't bother with the results. I come from a very sales background, and sales teaches you one thing. You might try the hardest, but at the end of the day, it's the client or the customer who makes the decision. Things are out of your control. But if you've not worked hard, then you won't get the outcome. So let it go beyond a certain point. On the other hand, you got to be super paranoid about what is happening in the market. May that be at your client location, or may that be in a competition world, or for that matter, what is happening in US in terms of newer technologies. So one thing which I have learned is you cannot switch off and turn around and say, hey, I don't care what's happening in the US. Stablecoin is something which I don't really want to understand. Sure, India is not adopted to stablecoins, but as a fintech operator, you've got to understand and what role it can play. There are arguments out there which says that potentially stablecoins could disrupt what a Visa and Master is doing. And if that is true, then I need to be paranoid about it. So staying paranoid is also equally important. Two opposite points, but I do believe that you got to pull all of those together.
Well, is there something on your bucket list that you haven't ticked off yet that you would like to?
In the corporate world?
Both, personal and corporate.
Let me say on the corporate world first. I think in the corporate world, I think there is an opportunity for us to create a really humongous fintech coming out of India. And that's the reason why I believe this Pine Labs journey is a long journey. It could be another 20, 30 years journey for Pine Labs because I think the opportunity is humongous right in front of us. When it comes to personal world, like I said, I'm quite content with what I do every day, hanging out.
No fear of missing out.
No fear of missing out at all. Again, I'll say this. I would have gone for every game of my children when they have competed. I've been available without having to worry about FOMO. So no, I've got no FOMO at all.
No FOMO at all. So, when you talk about a behemoth from India, is the aspiration to be the largest global fintech company out of India?
Yes, absolutely. Anything shorter is not doing justice.
Not doing justice. Well, we wish you the very best of luck, Amrish, and thank you so much for coming back onto Young Turks. This time we managed to get you,
Thank
but
you.
it's great to have you join the show. And thanks very much for your time today. We wish you the very best of luck with everything that you're hoping to do at Pine Labs.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Young Turks Reloaded podcast. If you enjoyed watching our conversation, then write to us with your feedback and suggestions. We'll see you again next week. Till then, from all of us here on the team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.